Officer Logan Pierce was making his rounds through the snowy peaks near Timber Falls when his heart nearly stopped. There, in the middle of the storm, a German shepherd lay pinned to the ground by 4 iron stakes, his body battered, his fur stiff with ice and blood. Logan's hands shook as he cut through the ropes. Just then, headlights emerged from the storm. A black SUV crawling up the mountain. The driver's cold stare met Logan's, almost as if he already knew what the officer had just found. Who could have done this to the dog? Why was that vehicle heading toward the very place of cruelty? What followed would break your heart and restore your faith in miracles. But before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. High above Timber Falls, Colorado, ruled with a merciless hand. Snow whipped across the ridgelines like shattered glass driven by the wind. Below, the valley glimmered faintly with timber homes and smoking chimneys. But up here on the cliffside road there was only darkness, snow, steady hum of a patrol SUV. Behind the wheel sat Officer Logan Pierce, 36, broad-shouldered and worn by years of long nights on duty. His eyes carried the fatigue of someone who had seen far too much. Both his parents were gone now, his father once a logger, his mother a nurse. All he had left was the sheriff's uniform he wore with quiet pride. Navy blue fur, lined collar, badge gleaming against the storm's gloom. The heater barely cut the cold, and the night should have been routine. Check for wrecks, keep the roads clear for plows. Something about the silence felt wrong. Too quiet, even beneath the howl of the storm. Logan flicked on his high beams as the road bent into an empty stretch. Flurries shimmered like white sparks and then, movement. He slowed, rolling the window just enough to listen. At first only wind. Then, but real, a sound that pierced through the storm. A whimper, a cry. Logan killed the engine. Silence pressed in. He grabbed his flashlight, sinking deep into the drifts as he followed the sound. What he found nearly stole the breath from his chest. A German shepherd, bound to iron stakes, cutting deep into raw flesh. His sable coat, dark and frozen with blood, clung to trembling ribs. Glassy eyes flicked toward Logan, as if hope had already died. "Dear God," Logan whispered, dropping to his knees. With his knife he tore through the ropes, cut revealing wounds beneath. The dog barely moved, too weak, but in his gaze a faint ember of trust flickered back to life. "There you go, boy," Logan murmured. He wrapped the shepherd in his emergency blanket, and hauled him into his arms, staggering back through the snow. The dog was heavy. Logan carried him as one would a fallen comrade. He laid him across the back seat, tightened the blanket, and cranked the heater. The SUV rumbled downhill, eyes darting constantly to the rearview mirror. The shepherd's chest rose and fell shallowly. Far too shallow. He needed Dr. Claire Jennings, and fast. Headlights slashed through the storm. Another SUV. Black, unmarked. It climbed straight toward the place Logan had just left. As their vehicles passed, the driver turned, their eyes met. Pale face, sharp features, and a gaze so cold it felt inhuman. No wave, no nod, just recognition, as though he already knew what Logan was carrying in the back seat. The black SUV vanished into the blizzard, but Logan's instincts screamed, this was no coincidence. Whoever that man was, he was heading straight for the clearing where the shepherd had been left to die. But Logan couldn't turn back, the dog needed him. For now the mystery would have to wait. By the time Logan reached Timber Falls, midnight lay heavy over the town. Most windows were dark, only the diner sign buzzing faintly. He parked at the small brick veterinary clinic and rushed to the door, the bleeding shepherd in his arms. "Doctor," Jennings answered, startled but quick to act. Tall, wary, auburn hair in a messy bun, glasses slipping down her nose. She took one look at the bundle in Logan's arms and ushered him inside. "My God, Logan. Bring him in." The clinic smelled of antiseptic and hay. Logan laid the shepherd on the exam table, and Claire moved with calm urgency. Her scissors snipped away blood-matted fur as she muttered to herself, male, 5 or 6 years old, ribs possibly cracked, multiple lacerations, dehydration, abuse. She glanced sharply at Logan when he explained, they staked him down. 4 iron rods, left him there to die. "That's not cruelty," Claire said grimly. "That's deliberate torture." Her hands paused on the dog's hind leg. Something was under the skin. She cut carefully and drew out a thin metallic chip, gleaming with etched lines. "This isn't natural," she whispered. This is engineered. Logan snapped a photo and sent it to Mark Reynolds, his childhood friend turned microtech expert. Don't tell anyone, Mark warned. If someone implanted that in a dog, they'll do anything to keep it secret. For nearly an hour, Claire worked tirelessly. Fluids, bandages, steady hands. She sighed. He's badly injured, but he's strong. Stronger than most. That gives him a chance. Logan leaned close to the shepherd, his voice low. Boy, you're not done yet. Claire met his eyes, serious. Logan, this wasn't random. Someone's been using him. Training him. Hurting him. You know what that means. By rescuing this dog, you've stepped into something much larger. Logan rubbed his face, the storm still clinging to his coat. Yeah, I saw the black SUV. Claire's gaze flicked to the chip. Be careful, you've just taken their only witness. The storm rattled the windows. Inside, the shepherd lay swaddled and breathing, barely. Logan knew this was only the beginning. Days passed. The storm broke. Timber Falls buried in glittering snow. The shepherd, now named Ranger, began to heal. Bandages stayed clean, his eyes opened more often, his ears whenever Logan entered. Claire hardly left his side, and Logan visited daily. Sometimes in uniform, sometimes with coffee in hand, watching quietly as Ranger slept. But peace would not last. One evening, as the clinic lights glowed against the snowy street, the door opened. The sound of boots on tile made Logan straighten. A new figure stepped inside, Victor Hale, and with him, danger was about to begin. Victor Hale entered the clinic like a shadow wrapped in wealth. Mid-40s, sharp features, his suit and wool coat tailored to perfection, gloves polished to a shine. He carried himself with the sort of quiet dominance that made others step aside without knowing why. Pale Eye scanned the room once before locking on the cot in the corner. I believe you have something of mine, he said smoothly. Logan rose from his chair, shoulders tense. This isn't a lost and found. The shepherd, Victor continued as if Logan hadn't spoken. That dog is company property. He strayed under unfortunate circumstances. I'm here to collect him. Dr. Claire Jennings appeared from the back, stopping cold at the words, shook with controlled anger. That dog was beaten nearly to death, starved, left in the snow. If he's yours, you belong in court. Walking out with him, Victor didn't even spare her a glance. His eyes stayed on Logan, weighing him. Officer Pierce, noble work, rescuing him. You don't understand. That animal is part of a program, valuable, trained. You've made a mistake keeping him. Logan folded his arms, voice flat. The only mistake would have been leaving him there to die. Until I know who did this, the dog stays under my protection. Something flickered behind Victor's eyes, a crack in his perfect composure. He stepped closer, cologne sharp in the air. His voice lowered to a warning. Don't confuse compassion with wisdom. Some matters reach far beyond small-town law enforcement. Claire bristled, fire in her tone. And some matters are simple. Right and wrong. You don't get to stroll in here and claim a living creature like property. Only then did Victor turn to her, his gaze cold as if assessing machinery. You're out of your depth, doctor. With a dismissive shrug, he looked back at Logan. Very well, keep him. For now, when the papers come, when ownership is proven, you'll have no choice. Resist and there will be consequences. Logan didn't blink. Get out. Air seemed to freeze as the two men locked eyes. Finally Victor gave a thin smile, turned and left. His footsteps echoed until the door closed behind him. Silence hung heavy. Claire whispered, "Who was that man?" "Trouble," Logan muttered. "And now he knows our names." That night, Falls lay hushed beneath new snow. Logan sat in his dim kitchen, coffee cold on the table. His jacket hung damp on a chair, dark as he waited for a call he knew would come. At the clinic, Claire kept watch over Ranger, insisting Logan rest. But sleep was impossible. The memory of Victor's stare made it clear. Threats like that were never empty. Near midnight, the phone buzzed. Mark Reynolds. Logan's oldest friend. "Logan," Mark said without greeting, urgency in his voice. "I scanned that chip. You're not going to like this. Tell me, it's not just a tracker, it's a neuro override. It shuts off pain, suppresses fear, even hijacks motor responses. Our training loops in the code. Patterns meant to force obedience." This wasn't medical. It was weaponization. Logan gripped the phone tighter. "You're saying someone built him into a soldier." "Exactly. Conditioning tech. Enough to make an animal ignore pain, fighting past the point of collapse. And this isn't backyard hacking, it needs serious money, labs, expertise. Whoever's behind it is organized. Mark's voice dropped lower. Ranger isn't the only one. The files mention dozens more. The weight of the words pressed down on Logan like the snow outside. He whispered, almost to himself, "He's not a machine. He's a survivor. Won't let them take him back." Mark was silent for a beat. Then, "Be careful. If Victor showed his face, he thinks he's untouchable. Like that, don't fight fair." The next morning, Logan drove before dawn, his SUV climbing the narrow road back into the mountains. Frost clung to the windows, the heater working overtime. His mind stayed fixed on one thing: finding the truth. At the ridge clearing, he found fresh tire marks under the snow. He followed them until the trees broke to reveal an old timber depot, sagging and half-burned, its sign barely legible, Peak Supply Depot. Inside the barn the air stank of rust, hay and blood. Shafts of gray light cut across rows of cages, clawed and dented by desperate animals. Chains swung faintly from the beams. Logan crouched at one, touching the bars, tight at the tufts of fur and dried blood. On a crude workbench lay muzzles, straps, syringes, even spent military shell casings. And against the wall, covered in maps and photographs, dogs, dozens of them. Different breeds, numbered, cataloged. One photo froze Logan cold: Ranger, stiff against a chain link fence, a gloved hand gripping his leash. His stomach turned. They hadn't just used Ranger. They had documented him like merchandise. Transport routes, timber falls at the center. Then a sound creaked from above. Weapon drawn, Logan crept up to the loft, empty. Just crates, dust. On one box, a modern flashlight, recently used. He snapped photos, bagged evidence: a muzzle, a shell casing, a piece of chain. Stepping back into the cold. Ranger hadn't been abandoned by chance. He was discarded after serving their purpose. And if there were maps and photos of others, Ranger wasn't the only victim. As Logan's SUV rumbled back down the mountain, the evidence beside him, one thing was clear. Timber Falls wasn't just a town in the snow. It was sitting on the edge of a network that turned animals into weapons. He saved was their most dangerous secret. The items on the seat beside Logan weren't random trinkets. They were proof. Ugly, undeniable fragments of a much bigger machine. Each one made his chest tighten, knowing that someone, somewhere, would burn the world down to take them back. Was just settling when headlights appeared in his rearview mirror. Up here traffic was rare, but not impossible. Still, the way those lights clung to his bumper made the hair on his neck rise. He eased his SUV into a turnout, expecting the vehicle to pass. Instead, another truck screeched across the road ahead, blocking his path. Rusted, dented, tailgate tied shut with rope. It looked like it belonged out here. Logan's gut told him otherwise. Two men stepped out. The first, mid-40s, hard face scarred by years of fights, camo jacket patched at the elbows. The second, younger and wary, blonde hair greasy under a knit cap, a cheap leather jacket hugging his frame, with the swagger of men who thought the road, and anyone on it, was theirs. Logan lowered his window a crack. "Move the truck," he said flatly. Older man grinned, a grin colder than the air itself. "No, why would we do that, officer? You picked up something that doesn't belong to you." Logan's eyes flicked from the bagged evidence on the passenger seat to the back, where Ranger lay swaddled in blankets. The shepherd's ears twitched. A low growl rumbled from his chest, deep, primal, honest. Logan had heard that sound before. It never lied. The younger man barked a laugh. "Got yourself a prize. Somebody's gonna pay for that." He jerked his chin toward the depot road. "You don't even know what you've stumbled into." Logan's hand hovered near his holster. "You're going to move," he warned. "Or I'll make you." The older man slipped a hand inside his jacket. Split second, Logan saw metal glint. Cold bit his fingers as he gripped his pistol. Then everything exploded at once. The man drew his weapon. Ranger's snarl shattered the night, feral and unrestrained. It bought Logan a heartbeat, just enough. He shoved his door open, drew his pistol, and fired. The shot struck clean, tearing into the man's shoulder. He dropped, weapon clattering to the snow, red blooming across his jacket. His partner froze, panic flashing in his eyes before bolting back to the truck. Engines roared to life. Headlights bathed the road as two vehicles tore away, taillights vanishing into the storm. Silence followed, broken only by Ranger's heavy panting. Logan's knees trembled as he lowered his weapon, radioed in, voice steady despite the adrenaline. One suspect down, shot in the shoulder. 2 others fleeing east. He crouched beside Ranger, easing the shepherd's head onto his lap. The pulse was faint but steady. "You did good," he whispered. "You kept us alive." The older man's words echoed in his head. This ain't just about dogs. It was a warning, written in blood. By the time backup arrived, Logan had gathered what he could: the gun, the casings, the tire tracks already freezing into the road. He didn't chase the others. Not with Ranger injured. Tonight, survival mattered more. Back in Timber Falls, the sheriff's office smelled faintly of coffee and pine cleaner. Sheriff Daniel Moore, and cautious, studied the chip Logan dropped on his desk. His mustache twitched as he held it up to the light. "What in God's name is this?" "Control device," Logan said. "Built to override pain. To turn dogs into weapons." The sheriff leaned back, chair creaking under his weight. "Yersi, you realize what you're saying? That someone's running an operation big enough to turn animals into soldiers?" "I'm not saying it," Logan replied. "I've seen it." Moore was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "All right. I'll stand with you. Understand, once we move there's no turning back." Later, Logan returned to the clinic. Ranger rose when he entered, thumping softly against the floor. The bond between them had hardened into something unbreakable. "Good," Logan murmured, scratching behind his ears, "because we're going to need you." But across town, Victor Hale was already watching. And he wasn't the kind of man who let shadows slip out of his grasp.